Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range taking a look at the M855 and the M855A1. These are 5.56 cartridges meant to be used in the U.S. military's infantry rifles. Now, the M855 and the A1 are 62 grain projectiles. So if you go back to the early days of 5.56, when it was first adopted, the standard bullet weight was 55 grains. And we used a 20-inch barreled rifle. Well, the world, U.S. military has moved on to 14.5-inch barrels, and there were some concerns after 20 years of war in the Middle East that the 5.56 wasn't quite up to the task. It had some growth it could benefit from, if you will, in terms of ballistic performance. And so the U.S. military set about to modernize the cartridge and try to squeeze every bit of performance out of the 5.56 cartridge they possibly could, which led to an interesting development, the M855A1. Now, the M855 goes back to the Cold War era. So that cartridge has been around for a while, the 62 grain green tip, which I have right here. So if you take a look at this original cartridge, that green tip, people are familiar with it. But if you look over here, this is the new A1, and you'll notice it has this metallic tip to it, and we'll talk about why that is. They use the same basic components. The M855A1 is missing a critical component from its bullet design, and that is lead. U.S. military wanted to go to a green projectile, so the greenie has taken over, and the green projectile lacks lead, so it's copper and a steel tip, a hardened steel tip. Over here on the M855, we have a copper, a steel penetrator, if you will, and then a lead base. So quite a bit different in terms of bullet design, but one of the biggest things that they did is pretty much what you've seen them do with the 277 Fury or the 6.8x51. That's to bump the chamber pressures up to a considerable level to try and compensate for the shorter barrel of the M4 carbine, which is that 14.5-inch barrel. So what they've done is they've used a different propellant, and they're accelerating that bullet to 20-inch barreled rifle velocities, and they're doing that by increasing the chamber pressure by about 10,000 psi, and that's not insignificant. So 5.56 is supposed to operate not above 55,000 psi. There have been interesting reports out there. Small Arms Solution has a great article about the M855A1 in a comparison to the original M855, and a lot of the information I want to give to you today comes from that article. But the M855A1 is that 10,000 extra psi is going to cause that bullet to go faster out of a shorter barrel. It's going to peak, the pressures are going to peak differently because of the different propellant, but it's also going to cause problems with the M4 carbine, and those problems come in the form of accelerated wear. And we'll talk about that in today's video, but we want to shoot it into clear ballistics gelatin because one of the key issues that the U.S. military was concerned with was the lack of ballistic performance with the original M855 and the M193 ball rounds. And so they wanted to increase lethality with the cartridge. And so we'll shoot it into some clear ballistics, but also we want to do an accuracy test. The M855 is not known for its accuracy. It's kind of a 4-inch cartridge at best, at least in my experience, on average. And we'll see how the M855A1 stacks up to the original M855 in terms of the accuracy in today's video. We'll also get some ballistic data from our trusty Garmin Zero. We'll be able to give you some velocity data between the two cartridges as well. All right, so let's get started with today's video. We'll do a little bit of accuracy testing, a little bit of velocity testing, and a little bit of ballistics gel testing. And I think you're going to find the outcome quite interesting. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. We have 3 clear ballistics blocks downrange. It's about 5 meters away. I have a Daniel Defense Mark 12. On top of it, I have a Primary Arms Athena 3-18 optic. And then on the end, I have a OSS/Huxworks suppressor. So about 5 meters away, the clear ballistics gelatin. It's a silicon-based gel. It's stable at temperatures like today, which is about 90 degrees outside. And we're just going to try to get an idea of what the wounding characteristics look like for the M855 and the M855A1. There are 3 blocks down there. The last block is a previously used block. We call it a catch block, just to catch the bullet. The first 2 blocks should give us an idea of what the wounding channel looks like in the test medium. So hopefully the catch block catches it. 3 blocks should be enough. First up is the green tip Federal M855 ball. And this is the old school stuff, Cold War era ammo. And first round, the M855 yawed extremely quickly and split into 2 pieces and came to rest about 20-21 inches into the ballistics gel. That's a pretty abrupt stop for a rifle round. We've had handgun rounds penetrate more deeply than that. So if you take a look at what happened here, here's our first block. Each one of these blocks is 16 inches. They're called FBI blocks. And we have a little ruler here. Now you can see the entrance is right here. The round comes in at about 4 to 5 inch mark. Right around here, we start to see the bullet yaw, and which causes a stretch cavity to appear. At about 8 inches in, that stretch cavity is about 2.5 inches wide, so it gets pretty sizable. Now I saw right after I fired this from the rear of the clear gel, I could see just how big the bloom was from that stretch cavity. So the bullet tumbled violently. It hooked to the right. One piece, the lead nose piece that's painted green, came to rest right at the very edge at about 20 inches here. And about 21 inches, the back half of the bullet continued on, kind of hooked this way, then hooked back. The bullet split into 2 pieces. So that's pretty impressive. We didn't even come close to needing the catch block back here, but we'll leave it. Now, because we've really goofed up this block with that huge bloom, I want to see what the M855A1 does. So I'm going to switch these blocks out. This one has caught these rounds. I'll turn this around, move it to the front, move this one behind it, and hopefully the M855 does something similar and doesn't penetrate all the way into the 3rd block, and we can get an idea of what that cavity looks like. But that's pretty interesting. I'll let Jason take a close-up of that for you guys. So next up, we have some M855A1, and I have 1 round loaded using the same Daniel Defense. I should also mention this has an 18-inch barrel. The gel's the same distance away, and let's see how this compares to the original M855. All right, guys, this is really interesting. So the M855A1, immediately upon entry into the gel, just exploded. Think of a firework. It looks like little fingers went off everywhere. So it immediately did that the first couple of inches upon entry into the what would be soft tissue. So it starts right upon entry, and about 4 inches in, that's where all the little shards stop. And then the bullet continues on. The base, that would be the jacket that peeled away. The penetrator came to rest down here. So it kind of tumbled downwards and came to rest down here. That's at about the 13-inch mark or so. The stretch cavity goes from the beginning of the block all the way to here, which is about 12 inches. So you got about 12 inches of expansion and bullet tumbling and stretch cavity. Then it calms down quite a bit. The base of it hooks off to the left, and it actually comes to rest right here, almost exiting the second block. So a little bit more penetration with this. Let's see if we do, it's 18 inches, 25 inches total with the base. So a couple more inches of penetration than the M855. But this is absolutely amazing. That is devastating in terms of ballistic performance. That is a lot of soft tissue damage right as soon as that bullet enters. A lot of complaints about the the 5.56 in the past is that the bullet would just tumble, do minimal damage, and just exit the body. And as you can see here with the M855A1, it's causing a lot of soft tissue damage right out of the gates and as it hits that, that gelatin. So really, really interesting results for sure. That's really impressive. All right, so let's quickly touch upon some of the problems the M855 A1 has been causing with the rifle. So we have that increased chamber pressure. Now, according to Chris over at Small Arms Solutions, we haven't been completely forthright with our NATO allies in terms of what this cartridge is capable of doing in terms of the pressures it generates and things like that. And so it's beating the rifles up. We're seeing about a 50% reduction in barrel life, which is significant. We're seeing about a 3,000 average round count between bolt failures on the M4 carbines, which is very significant. And we're seeing other parts failures elsewhere in the system. Now, this isn't a problem with the M4. This is the fact that the U.S. military has bumped up the pressure so high it's well outside of the design parameters of the original carbine. So the U.S. Army is basically beating their rifles to death. That, and because it has the exposed penetrator, the hardened steel penetrator here on the nose, it's carving the feed ramps on the rifles as well. So it's damaging the rifle all over the place. So if you're thinking, I'm going to go out and get a bunch of M855A1, it's going to be my standard cartridge, good luck. You have to be Bill Gates because the stuff is rare and expensive. But if that was your end goal, you might want to rethink that, because if you had it even, 5,000 rounds of the stuff, it's going to destroy your rifle. So you don't want to run a steady diet of it. So it's going to be interesting to see how the U.S. military winds up deploying this stuff, because they're really going to have to ramp up production of spare parts and rifles because of how destructive it is to the system. All right, so let's do some testing and see what types of velocities we get with the M855 and the M855A1. We have some green tip military ball, green tip M855 loaded into the magazine, 3 rounds. We have our Garmin Zero, which is an outstanding chronograph. I mean, this is all you will ever need in a chronograph. This thing is amazing. It's talking to my phone. All right, you just set it up, point it down range, and let's get our first velocity. So 3,030 feet per second. 3,026 feet per second. 3,038 feet per second. All right, so we'll end that string and let that upload to the phone. There it is. Now let's load up some A1. Pick this stuff up online. It's very expensive and hard to find, but we wanted to test it. 3 rounds. Let's see what type of velocity we get. Now keep in mind, guys, both of these are 62 grain projectiles. This one is leadless, though. All right. Rifle, blah, 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 blah. All right, here we go. 3 rounds of A1. 3,035 feet per second. 3,041 feet per second. So what's up with the higher chamber pressures? We're not getting that velocity. 3,040 feet per second. Interesting, huh? So we've been told about the chamber pressures being 10,000 psi higher, and presumably that's to get a higher velocity. Now, this is an 18-inch barrel, and this is designed to work out of a 14-inch barrel, but I highly doubt that the bullet suddenly not being pushed by the gases anymore is slowing down in the barrel. I don't think that's what's happening here. That is really, really interesting. All right, let's see what type of accuracy we're going to get out of these 2 cartridges, because I've been shooting green tip for a long time, and I generally shoot 55 grain M193 because it gives me better accuracy than the green tip. Let's see how the A1 stacks up to it. All right, let's do some accuracy testing. We have some M855 loaded into the magazine, have 5 rounds, and we have a target down at 100 yards. We'll do a quick 5-shot group here. The Daniel Defense. All right. All right, that's typical M855 stuff right there. All right, now let's try the A1. Move over to the target to the right. All right. A little bit tighter. Not match quality, but definitely usable. All right, so we'll take a look at those group sizes and report back. So what do we find out about the M855A1 this afternoon? Well, I found out that if it's operating at 10,000 psi higher chamber pressures than the M855, it's not showing any evidence of that in the velocities. You would think that big of a pressure difference would cause it to be maybe 31, maybe even 3,200 feet per second out of an 18-inch barrel, but we're getting about the same velocities between the M855 and the M855A1. And so we even use two different lots of the A1 ammunition. Jason had some that he brought out, gosh, almost a year ago that we had here in the shooting shack. And then this is the stuff I just most recently picked up. And we tested it over the chronograph, the two different lots, and they gave us about the same velocities within 15 feet per second or so of each other. So it's, I don't know if some spec has changed, but that's what it is when we did our testing today. So in terms of the 50% more barrel wear, if that's coming from increased velocity, well, there is no increased velocity based on our testing, so I don't really see how it's going to damage the barrel any more quickly unless that steel penetrator is banging around in the barrel on its way down. With regards to the damage it might cause to the feed ramps, that's very real, and we do have pictures of that damage that Small Arms Solutions posted. So in the end, is the M855A1 a better cartridge? Well, if you take a look at the ballistics gel we shot it into, that's pretty impressive. Okay, that bullet literally started to come apart immediately upon entering the gel, and then it gave good penetration past 20 inches into the gel, which means it is very lethal. And it wasn't dependent upon the bullet yawing or tumbling in the gel to give those types of give that type of performance. The bullet just did it on its own without that yawing. Now the bullet, the base of the bullet, the copper part did tumble and almost come out the end or the second block about midway down. But all that initial damage that we saw was caused by the bullet literally violently ripping itself apart upon entering the soft tissue. So when it comes down to the accuracy side of things, here's the accuracy that we saw. So here's the M855 green tip. And this is typical. You know, you get a couple of rounds landing here, and then you get some wild shots. And that was about 2.5 inches center to center from the two furthest shots apart. Here's 2.1 inches for the M855A1, and we see a little bit more consistency in the group. Okay, this is just a larger group. So is it more accurate? Yeah, and that's what most people have been saying. It's marginally more accurate. Is it vastly more accurate? Not really, but it's giving about M193 ball accuracy in my experience using military ball ammunition on the 55 grain side of things. So in the end, is it worth spending a bunch of money on? No, I wouldn't do it. Even if it was living up to its promises of higher pressures, that would just create more wear and tear on your rifle. You're really not getting anything out of it. I think that you're probably your best option for, you know, stockpiling for any type of trouble you might find down the road. Just get the most affordable ammunition like M193 ball that you can find, brass case quality ammunition, store that for your rainy day, and then use the cheaper stuff for range and target practice. I don't necessarily recommend getting the A1. If you want to, go do you, but I wouldn't invest in it personally. I just don't see the actual benefit to it. The terminal ballistics are outstanding, but are they enough to make me spend that kind of money and potentially damage my rifle in training? Nope, not for me. Anyway, let me know what you think about the M855A1. Is there any additional type of testing you would like to see? Maybe barrier penetration type tests? Let us know in the comments down below. I do try to read the comments for the first couple of days after I post a video live. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel so we can continue to bring you content like this, consider becoming part of our Patreon family. There's a link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got the thanks and support button underneath the video player you're watching right now. You can hit either one of those buttons and help support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Please swing by, check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 16 years of support. We'll talk to you guys soon.